Okay, so after that introduction, let's go now to methods in our IMRaD here. No? Although I gave you an introduction last time, remember? Yung, when we differentiated even yung qualitative from quantitative, nandun na, di ba? We discussed about the approaches, some of the methods as well, and then the characteristics of qualitative and quantitative research. Of course, we will always focus on qualitative research. So here, it will involve, this will be portion of your methods, no? Yung collecting, how will you, and when you say methods kasi, you are going to design already how you're going to proceed with your research paper. So this will involve collecting and analyzing non-numerical data. Non-numeric, so that would be text, video, or audio. Okay, audio because you're going to, if you are going to use interview, no, or maybe the voice of the people during focus group discussions. So there, to understand concepts, opinions, and experiences. It is gathering in-depth insights into a problem or generate new ideas for research. Okay, there, gathering in-depth insights. Of course, even if you have already your research problem in place, sometimes when you go to your respondents, when you're going to immerse yourself, to the group of people that you are studying, there will definitely be new insights, no? And then you can generate new ideas from those insights that you get from people. That's why nga napaka-dynamic, no, nung research na to. It may change, no, as you go on. So the humanities and social sciences, it will involve, no, the humanities, social sciences. That would include anthropology, sociology, education, health sciences, history, and others. All of the areas that you browse through yung Sustainable Development SDGs of the UN, they fall, no, into this category, no, because it's about society. Okay. So its opposite, of course, we know already, is quantitative, which involves collecting and analyzing numerical. Okay, numerical data naman dito sa quantitative. Okay, so that's for statistical analysis. In the methodology of quantitative, it's easier to design kasi you will yung parang exact. It's already exact, no? You know who your respondents are, you know how many numbers you're going to study. Ayan. Alam mo na yung questions na tatanungin, no? You have already established some theories and concepts that minsan pipiliin na lang nila, no? Yung mga respondents mo, yung mga sagot. Okay. However, in qualitative, of course, you do open-ended questions. Kaya driver mo talaga yun. Ang driver mo dyan is when you gather data already. No? Start gathering data. So yung qualitative research question, here are examples. I saw some already of your objectives and research questions. We just have siguro for some, no, kailangan lang natin i-reword or reconstruct yung mga research questions niya. But here are some general examples lang to. Okay, so example, how does social media shape body image in teenagers? So, so you get insights, right? How your respondents perceive. Okay, yan, perceptions na ganyan. So how do children and adults interpret healthy eating in the UK? Of course, when you say interpret, there are many different interpretations. Kaya ganyan, no? Yung qualitative research, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na, oh, ito dapat yung pag-interpret. Okay. So, that can be, no, one research question. What factors influence employee retention in a large organization? definitely these employees come from different backgrounds. So definitely then there will be different factors that would influence these employees. Okay, how is anxiety experienced around the world? Of course, there are many factors also affecting the life of people, and there are many uh, factors that would cause anxiety, among people. It depends then, depende sa society nila. Okay. But again, these are general nga, but you can always, yung sa atin, yung ginagawa natin, kasi I ask you to be more specific kasi we cannot naman do a study. Siguro yung sa malalaking groups na who are studying this, example sa education sector, or studies being done by the World Health Organization, okay lang sa kanila because they have all the funds. Pero kayo, if you want to study something like this, syempre, yun lang within your group, siguro, example, in Berea or in Vista Verde, in Cainta, ganyan. So, specify lang natin kasi wala naman tayong resources to study all of this. And then the time also, yung time limit. So how can teachers integrate social issues into science curriculums? Okay, these are just examples na pwedeng yung i-pattern later on if you want to, if you will revise pa, some of your problems. So ito, tignan natin naman, kapag quantitative research, usually ganito yung mga question. So what is the demographic makeup of Singapore in 2020? Okay, so usually parang Philippine Statistic Office or authority, parang yung mga questions nila yan, how many are in the family, ilan yung nagtatrabaho na, ganyan yung mga tanong, diba? So it's very exact, So how has the average temperature changed globally over the last century? Average temperature. So there's a stat for that, Kasi meron namang mga data, na nag-gather, mga NASA, ganyan, they gather. Does environmental pollution affect the prevalence of honeybees? Here, you can check siguro yung saan na ba yung mga usual na mga honeybees. Pinag-aaralan din to, di ba nawawala, so they are building mga honeybee farms, meron yan. Lalo na sa Western countries, they are so supportive of this, especially yung sa production of honey, kasi that's one of their parang staple, kasama sa staple food nila, di ba? Okay, so, ganyan, very exact. Does working from home increase productivity for people with long commutes? So here, you can, you can measure, right, yung commuting time, and then you can contrast or compare it with the productivity of people depending on how their employers evaluate them. Okay, so pwede yon, So that's still quantitative, pwede yan. Okay, so I hope you see now the difference of qualitative and quantitative. Okay, so here are the approaches that you will be including in the methods. When you are writing your methods already, of course, you have to include what approach, okay, and then what specific methodology will you use, Okay, this one, I introduced this last time, if you still remember. Okay, these are the most common ones, and I believe karamihan sa mga study niya, it will fall in any one of this, or one or more of these approaches. So we have, may nawawala, mahina ang connection. We have our grounded theory. So here, researchers collect rich data on a topic of interest and develop theories inductively. Okay, when you say inductively, it will build, remember, kaya nga driver mo talaga yung when you are starting to gather data already. Kasi it's the small insights that you get, that will build later on yung concepts and theories na ma-create mo based on yung mga data na nag-gather mo. Unlike in pure science, usually in pure mathematics yan, kagaya ng math, it's deductive sila, no? Inaral niyo ba to class? Sa usually kasama to sa Gen Math, may logic portion. Naabutan niyo ba yung logic sa Gen Math? Naituro ba sa inyo? Naalala niyo ba class? Sandali ata yun. Do you remember kung nakaabot kayo sa logic? Are you still with me? Grade 11? Did you encounter yung terms na deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning? Walang sumasagot. Naalala niyo ba kung naabot, alam ko nasa Gen Math ito dahil sinasabi ni Surgeon dati, dapat until yung logic portion maituro sa inyo. That's reasoning, no? Although in college, logic is one whole course. Naituro ba sa inyo to? Truth tables. Okay. Well, anyway, there are types of reasoning, di ba? There are types of, usually, meron tayo sa mga pure sciences, and then the social sciences. Usually, in qualitative research or in the social sciences, we use inductive reasoning. Usually, sa mga pure sciences or sa mathematics, you have deductive reasoning. Kasi, di ba, may mga theories na, and then from those theories, you come up with parang you prove, proving. Pero sa inductive reasoning, you build on the small data that you collect, to come up with a parang conclusion at the end. Okay, or you build theories. Okay, so the main difference between inductive and deductive reasoning is that inductive reasoning aims at developing a theory, while deductive reasoning aims at testing an existing theory. You test or you prove. Kaya sa math, ang daming proving, di ba? Given x plus y equals z. O, di ba yung mga ganun? So you prove that that is true. Mga ganun. Okay? And then inductive reasoning moves from specific observations to broad generalizations, while deductive reasoning the other way around. Okay? So when you say grounded theory, you build, you build your theory from yung incremental data that you collect. Okay? And then, if you're going to use this one, depending again on the topic or the research problem that you have. So, pwedeng ito ang piliin mo. Or another one would be ethnography. Researchers immerse themselves in groups or organizations to understand their culture. So immersion ito, usually if you want to study a group of people affected by their traditions, mga practices, diba? Mga beliefs, yan. So you use ethnography. This is an approach in qualitative research. Okay. Another one would be action research. So researchers and participants collaboratively link theory to practice to drive social change. In the field of education, usually ito ang ginagamit, action theory, action research. Kasi remember, there are already a lot of educational theories. Kami, as your teachers, when you were studying, tinuro na lahat ng theory sa amin when we were in college. So when we go into practice already, yun yung dala-dala namin na theories. Example, class management. There are a lot of theories on class management. Yung paggawa ng test, may mga theories lahat yan. Now, you are going to you are going to link that theory in your practice. Ngayon, kaya may mga action research every year, usually sa mga may masters na, no? Especially sa public school, every year yan, nagpo-produce yung mga teachers nila ng action research, yung mga may masters at saka may mga PhD na. That's the basis of their evaluation para masabi na they still deserve yung pay na binibigay ng gobyerno sa kanila. Kasi kapag master teacher ka na yata dyan, mataas na yung sahod mo, no? Master teacher, 1, 2, 3, PhD, ganyan. So tumataas yung salary nila. So they have to come up with their own research. So every year yan. Kaya kung minsan nagpapalit din yung theories in practice sa education. Especially now, meron sa inyo yung may nag-propose, no, yung sa online, no, from face to face. Ayan, if you want to study that, alamin mo din yung mga practices sa education. Ano ba yung mga theories? Okay? Hindi ka basta-basta magta-transition. Dapat kasi naka-link doon. Okay? So yan, that's action research. Yung ongoing. Okay, that's action. And then we have phenomenology or phenomenological research. Researchers investigate a phenomenon or event by describing and interpreting participants' lived experiences. Okay. So siguro sa inyo meron dito, no? Sa mga proposals nyo, merong gagamit nito or eto, narrative. Okay. Researchers examine how stories are told to understand how participants perceive and make sense of their experiences. Okay? So yan, alam ko ito, meron malamang, ito ang may nagamit sa inyo nito, saka narrative research. Case study rin, meron sa inyong mga nag-propose ng kanilang topics or yung mga research problems nila is gearing towards case study. Okay? So researchers conduct in-depth study of one person, a group of people, or an event. Okay, so case study yan ang pwede nyo gamitin. Okay, so later on, you can go back to this kung nakapili kayo sa tingin nyo ang mas appropriate na approach for your research problem, then that's the time you study more of the approach kasi meron naman mga steps, no? Kung example, nakuha mo yung action research as your approach, then you can search more on how to go about your study using action research approach. Okay? Yan. General naman ito. And then once you propose already the approach, this is a part of your methodology. So you describe what approach you're going to use and why. Okay. So ito yung mga pwede nyong gamitin, no, for the whys. Bakit ito yung approach nito. And then the methods that you are going to use. So whichever of these approaches ang mapipili nyo, you can use any or more or any one or more of these methods. So each of the research approaches involve using one or more data collection methods. When you say data collection, it is a systematic process of gathering observations or measurements. So whether here for us observations, diba? Kasi we are in qualitative research. Whether you are performing research for business, government, or academic purposes, data collection allows you to gain first-hand knowledge and original insights into your research problem. Okay, so that's the role of data collection. And what are the methods that you can use? Okay, it can be, these are the most common ones, although there are still others. And there are eclectic ones, kaya niya one or more, pwede mo i-combine if you have the time and the resources, of course. So you have their observation, recording what you have seen, heard, or encountered in detailed field notes. Some observations, di ba ngayon, kasi we have no gadgets, no? Madali na lang ngayon. Dati, ninote lang, yung iba nga, dinodrawing pa yung scene, mga ganon. Mas maganda ngayon because you have your handheld cameras, no? You can take a video, you can even use different angle shots, no? Para na makita mas klaro sa'yo later on. Okay, yan. So recording, and then of course you can always write your observations. And then there are also interviews. You can do this as well, personally asking people questions in one-on-one conversations. So interview, one-on-one conversations. How are you going to take down notes kapag ganyan? Usually, if you want to make an interview, you ask first, no, yung if they are willing, no, for you to interview. You know, ito yung hirap, isa sa mga challenges ng qualitative research is if you want to interview, not everybody will allow you, no, to ask them questions. Okay? And some would not be willing to answer. Yeah. Doon mo makikita no? Makikita yung how people behave. Yan. Kaya nga ang driver mo dito is the data when you are doing qualitative research. And then another one would be focus group discussions, FGDs, usually ang tawag nila dito. Asking questions and generating discussion among a group of people. Example, for some of you have proposed example, mga farmers of I don't know, in Central Luzon maybe, or farmers who belong to a tribal group. Okay. So, these are specific group of people. Kaya sinasabi ko minsan napaka-subjective kasi, di ba? And then your generalization for that is just for that small group, no? You cannot generalize it for every other group pa, no? Usually nandyan lang sa grupo na to, eto. Okay. Ito yung nalaman mo, no, when you are talking to them. That's why in agriculture as well, iba-iba yung problems nila, no? Kaya usually itong ginagamit sa mga ganyan, no, societal issues like the issues of farmers. Kasi yung mga farmers natin, they have different problems. Hindi yan pare-pareho. Okay? Kaya FGDs yung ginagamit sometimes. And even sa social class, di ba, ng group of people, iba-iba yung perception nila sa problem. Example, problema sa pagtaas ng presyo ng gasolina. Okay, when you go to yung lower social class, iba how they perceive yung problem na yon, iba din dun sa mga nasa middle class or nasa upper class. Okay, magkakaiba sila. Okay, so you treat them specific to the experiences that they have. Okay. And then surveys, malamang ito rin, gagamitin nyo, no? So distributing questionnaires with open-ended questions. Ayan. Open-ended. But there's a way on how we treat later, no? Kasi kapag open-ended questions, diba, Miss, how are we going to treat yung data kung iba-iba yung mga sagot nila? Yun yung difficulty din ng qualitative research. And like when you are doing quantitative, usually, ilan ang sumagot ng letter A, ilan ang sumagot ng letter B. Ganun na ang kukunin mo, and then you can already get a general insight of the group of people. Mas marami ang nagsabi na A ang problem nila. Let's say 60% of your respondents, and then 30% said B. Ganon. Pero here, no. You have to take all of their answers, and then later on, there's a way naman on how to collate their answers or analyze, no, and interpret their answers. And then ito yung sinasabi ko, kasi nga yung mga research problems nyo na tinignan natin, if you are not able to go and gather first-hand information, ito pwede natin gamitin, secondary research. Remember yung pinakita ko sa inyo last time using yung mga case studies ng mga hospitals, no? To check yung audit nila on plastic waste in hospitals. So those are secondary studies already na ginamit nila. Okay? So you collect existing data in the form of text, images, audio, and video recordings. And then you analyze them. Okay? Marami yan, no? Madaming areas din na pwedeng gamitan, no? Madami kasi nagpapalabas din ng mga case studies o kaya yung mga Even yung action research, if you can gather a lot of action research with the same topic and then pwede mong i-analyze yun. So you're using secondary research. Most policy makers, alam niyo yung policy maker, example sa Senado, sa Kongreso, 'di ba? Usually hindi naman yung mga congressman na ang nangongolekta, no, that they go to the field. No. They collect already yung mga data from, say, all the regions. No? They collect and then they analyze so that they could come up with a policy proposal. Okay? Yan. So secondary data na or secondary research na ginagamit ng mga yan. Kasi it would be very time consuming kung, no? Although some maybe if they have a group of, kasi yung mga yan naman may mga team naman sila, they want to address a social issue, so they can bring their team here. Okay, yan. So, pwede nilang aralin yun. Pero usually, ang ginagamit na nila yan, secondary from the different departments of the government. Example, DSWD, yan, madami yan, no? Ang DSWD, marami siyang mga hinahandle ng mga social issues. And then we also have DENR, no, sa environment. Kasama din yan. Okay? For our mambabatas or legislative body, no, to come up with policies, usually ito na yung ginagamit nila. Okay? Ayan. So these are the methods. These are the common ones. If you can still find others, okay lang. You can combine them. Kasi kaya it's very important that you read background literature. Kasi in the background literature, dun mo ma-discover na, aside from focus group discussions, pwede pala to. Pwede niya palang gamitin din ito. Okay. And then, dito rin, later on, pwede yung paano yung strategy nyo in observing, in making interviews. Meron din yan, no? Pwede nyo i-strategize. Okay. So here's a research example. So example, no, to research the culture of a large tech company. Okay. You decide to take an ethnographic approach. Okay, ethnographic approach yung gagamitin natin. So there, immerse themselves in groups or organizations because that's one specific group, no, a large tech company. So you work at the company for several months and use various methods to gather data. So it can be, ano ba yung mga methods mo? You take field notes with observations and reflect on your own experiences of the company culture. So observations with maybe yung mga colleagues mo and then your own experience as well. And you distribute open-ended surveys to employees across all companies' offices by email to find out if the culture varies across locations. Baka yung per department ng large tech company na to, iba-iba yung culture. Okay? And then you conduct in-depth interviews with employees in your office to learn about their experiences and perspective in greater detail. So here, ilan yung methods na ginamit niya. Okay? But of course, I don't expect you to use all of this kasi time consuming naman yung ganito, no? Okay. Yeah. Ito. When writing up your methodology for qualitative research, it's important to reflect on your approach and to thoroughly explain the choices you made in collecting and analyzing data. That's why in your method section already, of course, you banggitin nyo what approach will you use and why. Bakit? Okay? What is the significance of using this approach? Hindi nyo lang yung binanggit nyo lang, no? Pwede pa rin kayo magbanggit ng other background studies na nabasa nyo, pwede nyo banggitin, no? In the study of author X, okay, he was able to, ano yung nagawa niya doon? Ano yung naging result niya using that method? Okay. So, pwede yun, no? You can still include yung mga nabasa nyo, no? Previously. And then, you also have to include how are you going to analyze? So diba, you have already your approach, you have your methods, and then how are you going to analyze your data? Okay? proposal to ha. Ito yung proposal na gagawin ninyo. Hindi pa kayo nag-gather ng data. Okay? So for qualitative data, it can, ayan, nabanggit na natin ito kanina. No? Photos, text, videos, audio. For example, you might be working with interview transcripts, survey responses, field notes, or recordings from natural settings. So most types of qualitative data analysis share the same 5 steps. So you can follow these steps. So how are you going to prepare and organize your data? Okay, so example in your methods na, no? You're going to transcribe ba the interviews? Okay. Review and explore your data, examine the data patterns. So how are you going to examine, okay, the data patterns, repeated ideas? And then, eto yon, develop a data coding system. Remember na banggit ko kanina, when you have open-ended, ay dito naka-under, open-ended questions, usually your respondents will give different answers. So how, parang ang hirap, no? Unlike in quantitative research, A, B, C, D, E, yun ang pagpipilian nila. And then you can just, okay, ibigay mo na kung ilan yung nag-respond ng A, B, and C, and D. Okay? You can transmit that into percentage na. Okay? Pero dito, different eh. Magkakaiba yung sagot nila. So, you have to develop a data coding system. Okay? So, based on your initial ideas, establish a set of codes that you can apply to categorize your data. Although once you start gathering your data already, kung ito yung gagamitin ninyo, pwede na nating to go into more detail dito. Example, ang dati naalala ko may nag-survey dun sa kaninong batch ba yun? 3 years ago siguro yun. When I was handling research one as well. Give up ko kasi yan ng 2 years as I did not handle research one for 2 years. And ito yung ano kasi maganda yung study niya yung teaching young people, no? Mga junior high about sex education. Okay, yun yung topic niya. Okay, so of course I allowed him, pero dapat chinek ko muna yung mga questions niya. And then syempre iba-iba yung mga insights na nakuha niya nung nag-survey na, nung nagtanong na. So iba-iba yung question. Example, yung first idea, you have to code it. Example, ano yung idea mo ng teaching sex education in junior high school. Although meron kayo niyan, but partially lang, no? Hindi yung buo talaga na isang buong subject about sex education. So yon, example, itong idea na to na halos magkakapareho, nilagyan niya ng code na let's say AB. Tapos yung isa BE, mga ganun. So coding yon. O kaya numbers, pwede rin, no? O kaya yung acronym, magbigay ka ng acronym, no? Acronym for this category. Okay? May mga acronym siya. So yun yung coding system. Okay? Pwede kayong, dun sa methods nyo, kasi proposal pa lang yan, pwede kayong mag-suggest ng coding system. And then later on, maiiba pa yung style ng coding nyo. But definitely, you will have a coding system. Okay? Ito pala na yun, no? Assign codes to the data. Okay? So ito magkasama sila. So for example, in qualitative survey analysis, this may mean going through each participant's responses and tagging them with codes. Sometimes sa isang response, magkakaiba pa, no? Isang sentence lang yung sinabi niya, pero nakakuha kayo ng dalawang insights na nabanggit niya or more. Okay? So pwede yung i-distribute yun kahit na iisa lang yung sumagot. Okay? So example, meron kang 20 na respondents na na-interview or na survey. Kaya lang, yung mga sagot nila, pwede mong i-distribute into many of those codes. Okay? So kasi pwedeng yung isang tao, 2, 3 ang ideas niya. Okay? Pwede niyo pa rin i-distribute, no? Depende sa codes niya na nagawa. So as you go through your data, you can create new codes to add to your system if necessary. Kaya ganyan ka-dynamic ito. Okay? Basta alam ninyo that you will definitely be developing your coding system. Okay? Kasi nga open-ended. Okay? And then identify recurring themes. Link codes together into cohesive overarching or arcing themes. Okay? So, sometimes, di ba nag-code ka, napaka-detailed na yung pag-code mo. Kaya lang, nakita mo dun sa coding mo later, ay, ito, parang pareho lang dito. So, you can come up with ano to, a theme, no, for that answer. Okay? Yan. Ito yung exciting na portion when you do coding. Dati, I asked my students to make tables. Ayan, you can use spreadsheets para easier. Okay? Kasi, di ba, ita-transcribe nyo. Maganda later if you're doing face-to-face interview, na maganda i-record nyo. Kasi, ang hirap magsulat no, habang nagsasalita yung respondent mo. Okay, of course, you ask permission if they want their answers to be recorded, and then transcribe. No, you record and then you transcribe. Okay, that's the work of a field researcher, especially if you're using qualitative research. So, iyan dapat ang makita, o kahit hindi pa definite yung mga codes na ilalagay nyo, basta in your methods, after the approach, the methods, and then how are you going to analyze your data, dapat kasama yung, no? Banggitin nyo kung ano yung coding system na sa tingin nyo. If you already have questions in mind, kaya nga maganda, nagsusulat na rin kayo ng question nyo para at least ma-define nyo. No? You can define the coding system that you're going to use. Okay? I hope that's clear with you. Okay? Nai-imagine nyo ba? Nai-imagine nyo? Okay. I hope you can imagine it on your end. Okay. So here, there is in that data analysis, so you have those steps, no, that you can use. Okay. And then you can follow any one of this approach in data analysis. Okay. It can be content analysis, when you are describing and categorizing common words, phrases, and ideas in qualitative data. So example, a market researcher could perform content analysis to find out what kind of language is used in descriptions of therapeutic apps. So example, ang research nila is on therapeutic apps. Okay? So, dapat ano yung language usually ng mga gumagamit ng mga apps nito? Ano yung mga language na ginagamit nila usually to evaluate, to review, or to interact with those apps? Okay. So, content analysis yan. Content analysis. I guess, ayan. Sige, mamaya ka ito. Meron din isa na ginamitan ito or textual analysis na last time. And then you also have thematic analysis to identify and interpret patterns and themes in qualitative data. Example, a psychologist could apply thematic analysis to travel blogs to explore how tourism shapes self-identity. Okay, so theme. Example, ano yung theme usually ng mga travel blogs? Okay. Example, sa Pilipinas, may mga fina-follow ba kayo, class? Madami yun, di ba? Yung mga travel blogs sa Pilipinas, or even foreigners who come to the Philippines.
Si Kong
Okay.
TV pa. Si Kong TV pa, fina-follow.
Ano usually yung tema na gusto niyang pinopromote ba niya yung tourism sa Pilipinas? Yan ba yun? Ganun ba yun? Joshua?
Ano po, random vlogs lang po siya.
Random vlogs.
May mga pa-games din.
Pero usually, ano yung mga fini-feature niya when he or she goes to any part of the country? Ano yung the usual na fini-feature niya sa blogs niya or vlogs?
Dati po miss ano pa yung mga Quiapo vlogs lang po yung ano,
Yeah,
dati. Mga ganun pa. Apa.
Usually, di ba, meron yung mga sa pagkain, inuuna nila yan eh. Mga pagkain. So, ano yung theme ng vlogs usually ng isang vlogger? Okay, di ba, meron yung sa pagkain, o kaya yung undeveloped na mga, ano yan, parang napaka-rural, although maganda, parang ganyan. Ayan. So, pwede yon, no? Kapag may mga film, pwede nyo naman i-analyze. Pwedeng secondary ito, no? Pwedeng secondary. Kasi aaralin mo yung mga vlogs nila. O yung vlogs na sinusulat nila. Okay? You can, no? Thematic, no? Ano ba usually yung theme? Yan. Okay? And then we also have, you can also use textual analysis, okay, to examine the content, structure, and design of text. Example, a media researcher could use textual analysis to understand how news coverage of celebrities has changed in the past decade. So pwede mo i-compare yung mga in the previous decades, no? And then, paano nag-change? Example, in the 90s, ano ba? Ano na tayo? 2020. Or maybe 2000 to 2010, ganyan. Paano nag-change? And then you can also come up with a comparative, yung ngayon. Okay. Pwede compare, no? How it changed. Ito, class, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. There was one also who studied na ka-age niyo rin sila noon, grade 11. Ang in-study niya, yung mga text messages sa Messenger, sa Facebook, how yung age group, nag-send siya ng mga questions sa mga kaibigan niya na nasa age group niya. Okay? Tapos tinignan kung paano sila sasagot. Di ba? Yan, text analysis. Tapos, ano yun, sa age group niya, ganito pala, no? Tapos yung mga titas and titos, paano sila sumagot, okay? Sa mga messenger messages, di ba? Kapag sumasagot sila sa mga question. Yun, kinompare din niya yun, okay? Sa mga younger generation at saka sa older generation. Of course, nakita niya, dun sa result niya, na, di ba yung use sa inyo na yung mga LOL, mga ganun. Pero yung mga titas and titos, iba yung structure. Okay? Iba na yung structure ng pagsagot nila. That was exciting. No? Kasi ang naging basis niya kung bakit niya, bakit yung messenger messaging. Kasi nga, binild niya na how many the Philippines para naging social media capital tayo, especially sa Facebook. Okay? During this time. Ewan ko kung tayo pa rin ba ang number 1 sa paggamit ng Facebook and Messenger. But during his time, halos, no? Pilipinas yata nasa top in the use of Facebook. So tayo talaga nagpasikat ng Facebook. Okay. And then later on na lang nag-follow ang nasa Western countries because nakuha yung business side ng marketing side ng Facebook. Yun ang pre-promote para kumita sila. Okay? Yan. So madami na rin gumagamit ng Facebook. Pero during that time, 4 years ago yata yan no? Na Filipinos talaga ang pinakamarami. And it's for social, no? Hindi siya for marketing, it's not for business, it's not for advertising. Okay. That was fun. And then another approach would be discourse analysis to study communication and how language is used to achieve effects in specific context. So example, a political scientist could use discourse analysis to study how politicians generate trust in election campaigns. Napaka-timing yata nito. Okay? Ayan, actually madami yung mga debate sa TV, di ba? Sa online, yung mga platforms na ino-offer ng mga iba't ibang mga news institutions and agencies. Yan. So yan, yung communication and how language is used. Okay? Actually, meron yan di ba? Yung mga politicians na yan, yung iba dyan, meron din silang mga coaches. Okay? May mga coach yan. Ito lang ang sasabihin natin. No? Mga ganon. So, nag-i-stick. No? Okay? So, discourse analysis. You can use this as well. Okay, so any of these approaches in data analysis can be used. So how, last time, how are you go, di ba we had our 3 moves. Okay, actually dun sa IMRaD, dun sa old na reference natin, 3 moves din yung kanyang methodology, but I find this other resource na parang mas detailed yung pag-explain niya. So let's adopt this one. Pero halos pareho lang, no? Mas detailed lang yung pag-explain. So how to write your research methodology in 4 moves. Okay. By the way, class, are there questions so far? One hour na yata ako nagsasalita. Do you have questions? Naiintindihan pa ba, class? Naiintindihan niyo pa? Nagigets niyo pa? Okay. Yan. Sige, i-discuss lang natin para at least alam nyo, no, how to proceed. Okay. So, the methodology chapter explains what you did and how you did. Actually, ito naka-past tense na. Pero in your proposal, gamitan muna natin ng future tense kasi hindi nyo pa ginagawa. And then sa final paper, sa 4th quarter before your defense, of course, i-change nyo na yan into past tense, lahat na naka-future tense. Okay? Kasi nagawa nyo na. And definitely, there will be revisions. Okay? So you will have to include in your methodology the type of research that you will do. Okay? Kasi nga, nasa future pa lang tayo, hindi pa natin ginagawa. And then, how you collected or how will you collect your data? How will you analyze your data, which discuss na natin. No? Any tools or materials you will use in your research. And then your rationale for choosing this methods. So ano yung naging basis mo? Why did you choose those methods? So yan yung general, no? So the methodology section should generally be written in the past tense. So again, no, future tense muna tayo kasi this is just a proposal muna. Once you are done with the whole research, you have to revise, okay, your paper and then put them all in the past tense na kasi tapos na. Okay. So for now, write that in the future tense. So here's your first move. Explain your methodological approach. So we discussed already yung mga methods or the approaches that you can use. So begin by introducing your overall approach. What research problem or question did you investigate? So diba, in your introduction, you have already your research problem there. Okay. So example, did you aim to systematically describe the characteristics of something, to explore an under-researched topic, or to establish a cause and effect relationship? And what type of data did you need to achieve this aim? Okay. So, bakit yun yung approach na pinapropose mo? Okay. Did you need to collect? Do you have to collect a primary data or you are going to use secondary data? Okay. So you might also begin with a discussion of your rationale and assumptions underpinning or supporting your methodology. So these are the questions you can consider, no, when writing or explaining your approach, the approach that you chose. So why is this the most suitable approach to answering your research questions? Okay, is this a standard methodology in your field or does it require justification? How will you know that it's the standard? That will be based on your background, literature. Kung ito yung usual na ginagamit ng mga researchers, then you might as well do it. Or if you are going to propose another methods, then you have to justify why. Okay. And then, were there any ethical considerations involved in your choices? Okay. Bakit kailangan secondary research or bakit kailangan ang approach mo or the approach mo na pala phenomenology, bakit ganyan? Okay. Did you consider yung ethical or ethnography? Okay. Kasi usually culture to and by immerse yourself. So bakit yun ang napili mo? What are the criteria for validity and reliability in this type of research? So once na nakapili ka na, ito yung mga i-consider nyo. You have to learn more about that approach. Okay? And then, if you propose it to me, nakita ko na, kaya nga maganda na matapos yung talaga this quarter 3 hanggang sa methodology, para at least nakikita ko na rin. And then I can help you as well. Whatever approach you will choose. Okay? Ayan. And then, for, ito pa. Ay, naulit lang yata. So in a qualitative example, no, if you chose ethnography, you might aim to produce contextual real-world knowledge about the behaviors, social structures, and shared beliefs of a specific group of people. As this methodology is less controlled and more interpretive, you will need to reflect on your position as researcher. So ito na yung pwedeng yung papasok yung ethical considerations nyo. You should be more, no? You have to define yourself as the researcher, no? Okay? Taking into account how your participation and perception might have influenced the results. Ito, medyo mahirap ito unless you are an expert researcher already. You immerse yourself, but still you are very objective in your research, no? And the results of your research. Hindi ka magpapadala sa emotion. This is very, pero sa mga ibang kwan, if you read, may mga naririnig ako na mga nag-i-immerse, especially sa mga slum areas. Siyempre, kung minsan ang kwan mo sa sarili mo, nakakaawa sila, ganun, ganito. Tapos, papasok yung advocacy mo na dapat yung gobyerno ganito. Pero dapat hindi ka talaga patitinag doon. Yung galit mo sa gobyerno, bakit hindi na-address yung mga problem na ganito, hindi dapat magpatinag. You should be very objective para mas yung result ng study mo, mas maipipresent mo siya ng klaro. Okay? Kaya dapat in your statement, you are writing that when you are writing your introduction and your methodology, dapat walang kinikilingan. And then much more when you are presenting your results and your discussions. Dapat hindi kayo pumapanig sa something. Wala dapat yung sarili nyong opinion. Ipipresent nyo lang talaga yung facts para mas reliable yung inyong research. Okay, this can be one of the challenges of doing a qualitative research. And then again, no, describe your methods of data collection, o nasabi na natin kanina, example, interviews or focus groups. So this can be your guide questions. So describe where, when, how the interviews will be conducted. So that's in your proposal. No? So how will you find and select participants? Sino yung ma-interview nyo? Sino yung isa-survey nyo? How many people are you targeting? Okay. And then what form of interviews will you take? It can be structured. Kung minsan may mga ready ka na. Ready questions, although open-ended. Or it can be semi-structured. You can make a follow-up question. Diba? You have ready-made questions and then follow-up. Or unstructured. It depends kung nandun ka na, ano yung mga tatanungin mo. Siguro, kasi kung minsan some researchers, diba, ino-observe muna yung environment at dun pa lang nila i-construct yung mga tatanungin nila. Okay? So, parang nagkukan ka pa ng camaraderie with the people you're going to ask, di ba? Kung ano, depende yung tatanungin mo. Yan. Dependent on where they are, yung situation na na-observe mo. So, unstructured. Okay? Usually, yung mga social experiments, mga ganyan, no? Okay. Pwedeng semi-structured yung mga social experiments na gano'n. Okay? So, how long were the interviews and how were they recorded? So you have to define also, no, in your data collection, how are you going to record it? Are you going to use a tape recorder or your phone recorder? Ganyan. Okay? Or are you going to take, pero kung interview yan, class, wag yung take down notes kasi hindi mo ma-note lahat yan. Okay? And then, Ito pala, binigyan, kapag if you are going to use interview and focus group. If you are going to use participant observation, you will observe. So ito naman ang i-consider ninyo. Okay? What group or community will you be observing? And how will you gain access to them? Example, ang community na gusto mo ay yung mga ati dyan sa Antipolo. Mga AITA, di ba? May mga AITA communities dyan sa Antipolo. So how will you gain access? Will you go to their chieftain and ask permission? Okay, mga ganon. Dapat dinidescribe ninyo. How long will you spend conducting the research and where is it located? Okay? What role will you play in the community? O, ano yung magiging role mo? Kaya maganda, you have to explain muna how are you going to gain access. And then, ano yung magiging role mo? Will you be staying with the family? Will you be taking a role of parang nanny for how many days? Nanny sa mga anak nila? Okay. To become part, kasi nga you have to immerse also yourself. So how did you record or how will you record your data? Okay. So if you are going to choose this one, observation, then you have to consider these questions. If you are going to use naman existing or secondary research, existing data, explain how you selected the case studies. Bakit ito yung case studies na sinelect mo? So what type of materials did you analyze or how did you collect and select them? Okay. But aside from cases, pwede din naman dito yung existing data. Example, yung mga videos ng mga vloggers. Example, yung you're following vloggers. Okay. Pwede ka mag-select dun sa mga vlogs nila. Okay. Existing na yung data mo. You don't have to go to them and interview them. So it's already there. Okay. Yeah. Describe your method. Katuloy pa rin. Example, in order to gain a better insight into the possibilities for improvement of the product range, semi-structured interviews were conducted with 8 returning customers from the main target group of company X. So ito siguro may product si company, di ba? And then gusto nilang malaman how to improve, okay, yung product range nila. So of course, they have to interview their customers. Bakit sila bumabalik? Okay. So a returning customer was defined as someone who usually bought products at least twice a week from company X. So may definition, operational definition of your terms din dito, pwede nyo isama dyan. When you say returning customer in your study, i-define nyo what is returning customer. Okay? So dapat naka-define yun. Okay? When you put a term, okay, in your research study, dapat dinidefine niyo din yung term na yun. So, operational definition, tawag nila doon. Okay, how is it defined in your study? So the surveys were used to select participants who belong to the target group of 20 to 45 years old. Interviews were conducted in a small office next to the cash register and lasted approximately 20 minutes each. So you see now how detailed it is being described. Okay, answers were recorded by note-taking and 7 interviews were also filmed with consent. 1 interview preferred not to be filmed. Eto, pwede nyo nang i-note ito later on when you are gathering already the data. Pero, if you are still proposing, okay, you can propose na, example, the interview will take place near the cashier, for how long, o yung age group, ano yon. Of course, kapag nagbigay ka ng age range, you have to ask first yung how old are you, di ba? Siyempre, that's one of the questions. Kasi kung let's say sinabi niyang 18 years old, okay, thank you. Mag-thank you ka na kasi hindi siya kasama dun sa range ng tatanungin mo. Okay? Huwag mo tanungin lahat ng tao na lalapit. Okay? Dapat andon, no? Naka-define yan. Sino lang yung tatanungin mo. And then, let's move to the third step. Describe your methods of analysis. So example again, kanina na i-present na ito, no? Ito, example, content analysis, thematic, or discourse analysis. Let's look at this example na lang. The interviews were transcribed and thematic analysis was conducted. This involved coding all data before identifying and reviewing 6 key themes. Okay. Siguro, ngayon, dahil pinopropose nyo pa lang, okay, pwede nyo sabihin na, okay, the researcher will use coding, okay, and then preliminarily, you can identify themes already, di ba? Kasi based on your research question. Example, yung, ano ba yung pwede nyo gamitin dyan sa mga studies ninyo? Example, yung insufficiency of water ba yun sa'yo, Verly, no? Okay, based on your background study, pwede na kayo mag-identify ng themes. So, in your proposal, you can already banggitin, no? You can already enumerate the themes that you were able to identify. But definitely, that will change when you are already gathering the data. Kasi you might identify, ay, wala naman ito, hindi actually nila concern ito. So, scrap mo yon and then maybe it will change, no? Maybe ibang theme naman yung ma-identify mo sa actual na sagot nila. So pwedeng ganyan lang, proposal pa lang yung gagawin ninyo. But later on, when you are presenting the final paper, of course, you have now to describe yung actual na nangyari dun sa paper niyo, okay, sa research. And then, evaluate and justify your methodological choices. So your methodology should make the case for why you chose this particular methods, especially if you did not take the most standard approach. Okay, eto yun, you have to justify nga, diba? Kung hindi ito yung standard approach nung mga nabasa mo in your background study, bakit ito ang gagamitin mo? Ayan. You have to prove or justify bakit itong gagamitin. Discuss why other methods were not suitable for your objectives and show how this approach contributes to new knowledge and understanding. Okay? You can acknowledge your limitations and weaknesses also, no, in the approach you chose. So ililimit mo lang, no? But justify why these were outweighed by the strengths. So sometimes kasi, pwede kasi hindi ito yung standard na ginagamit. Pero ito yung choice mo. You have to justify. Pero you still have to acknowledge yung limitations niya. Okay? And then point out where the strength of using this approach or the methods, no, that you will be using. Example, unstructured interviews usually produce results that cannot be generalized beyond sample group, but they provide a more in-depth understanding of participants' perception, motivation, and emotion. Example, ang usual na ginagamit dun sa topic na yun or sa area ng study mo is structured interviews. Okay? Pero you chose to use unstructured. Then you have to justify it. Okay, bakit unstructured? Ayan, sinabi niya, they provide a more in-depth understanding of participants, perceptions, motivations, and emotions. So you have to justify why you are using that methodology. Okay? Ayan. So, clear ba so far, class? I know that's a lot, no? Pero you can follow this one, these steps, these 4 moves in writing your methodology, and then base them in the approaches that we discussed, okay? And then the methods that, yeah, yung mga approaches, and then yung research question nyo, you can always, as you go on, you can always reword them, reconstruct them so that you can come up with a more, ano to, yung parang complementary, yung research question mo dun sa approach na gagamitin mo. Okay? It's just a way of reconstructing, no, or revising your research question. Kung sa tingin niyo ay parang hindi sila nagja-jive, diba? Okay? Yan. Okay, are there questions, class? Do you have questions? I will be uploading this in your, we have 45 minutes or 40 minutes. You can go to your, open your documents, no? Google Docs. Are you still with me? That was a lot. Okay, I will stop recording muna ito. And then I will just upload it.